It's okay. Okay, good evening. Today we will be learning Daf Nun Hey Amud Aleph. So in the previous Amud, we learned all different ways of how to remember Torah, to gain Torah, about Chazara, about Chazering over, the importance of Chazara, the importance of making Simonim in order to be able to remember. So all different tachbulas of maneuvering in order to be able to remember the Torah. The Gemara says all this we spoke about is behind the Omer of Dimira. This is what he said. Avdimi. My says that what it says in the pasuk loy b'shamayim that the Torah is not b'shamayim loy b'evarayam. It's not b'shamayim. It's very easy for you. It's not so hard. So the pasuk is saying it's not in heaven. So you're getting an easy time. But the truth of the matter is, had it been in heaven, you have to go to heaven for it. It's so important because Chaim V'Amolos and all these things. So therefore, it's very important. And I've done you a favor. It's like B'Shemayim. But if it's B'Shemayim, you have to go and get that. If it's across the sea, you have to go there. In other words, that you have to overcome. So that's what the Gemara is saying. Chaim, what does it mean to go to heaven? The person able to go to heaven, to walk up to heaven, maybe you can go over the Yam. But it means that you should overcome any obstacle. So if it means extra chazara, it means making simonim, finding all different ways of how you should be able to retain the Torah. So you have to do that. That's the connection to the importance of the things which we learned in the previous one. Rav Amar, he says a different drasha on this pasuk. Loy b'shamayim he loy timtzo b'misha magbia daite aleha b'kishamayim. You won't find it by somebody who is so proud like the heavens. Daite aleha on the Torah. What means he says I can learn the Torah. I'll manage it. I don't need a teacher. This is Mashal explains. I don't need a teacher. I can learn myself. I don't need any help. So if you think you're so smart and so proud, so you make mistakes. You get it wrong. That's loy b'shamayim. The loy was loy ma'evarayam. Loy mishemarchiv daite aleo kiyam. That he broadens his mind in it like the sea. Thinks that he has he feels very comfortable in it, and he says, "Yeah, it's okay. I just listen to the shir once. I listen to the shir once, and I'll know it. I don't have to go over it." So that's what it means. That's what the Shah explains. Means marchiv daita aleha kriyam. So you need a teacher, and you need to go over and revise. Otherwise, you won't be able to get the Torah. Rabbi Yechon says another pirush in this another drush on this pasuk. People who are about gaivas, you won't find Torah about them. You won't find it because you have to humble yourself to learn Torah. So the Gasi Haruach who learning Torah doesn't come together. It requires quite a bit of humbling himself and asking questions in Eruvin, and so which all comes from the humility. The Seichrim and the Tagrim are the peddlers. So because those who are running all over the place, are traveling all over the place, they don't have the peace of mind because they're all over the place, so to speak. So those people also don't get Torah. So if you have to. And Rashi points out over here that the people who are all over the place and do a lot of traveling and all this, they don't get Torah. So Rashi points out something which we learned earlier, that it should be nira ve'eina nira. Earlier was spoken about the v'anokim legarger secha. It's like a choker around the neck. So the person who wears a choker So it's not seen. It's only seen a bit. The person lifts up his chin, then you see it. But most of the time, it's covered by his face and his beard. And therefore, also the people who are not seeing too much. Why they're not seeing too much? Because they're sitting in this medrash or in their houses and they're learning, not going out. And those people are not going out. They're hardly seen. Those are the ones who become the Torah. That's the concept. That's what Rashi adds in over here to Sachronim of the Tagrin. Okay, now we're going back to understanding how halacha is connected to the Mishnah. Tana Rabbanu went in the Brisa. How do you extend the cities? Extend the cities. How do you extend the cities relevance to the Tchum Shabbos? So there is room. You're able to extend the city limits from where you start counting the Tchum Shabbos. So but there's only certain ways how to do it. So he says it. So the Brisa says like this. This is on Dafn here without Arucha Kameshahu. If it's long, then it's the shape of a rectangle. So then Kameshahi, then that's it. You can't extend anything. A city is in the shape of a rectangle. So then you just the city limits is from where you start counting Tchum Shabbos. Agula, if it's a city in a circle, so you make a square around it. So it's going to be when you draw up the limits of the city. When you draw up the limits of the city, it's going for Tchum Shabbos. The city is going to be the circle, and the limits will be the circle which surrounds would be the square which surrounds the circle, and you will make that square. The sides of the square will be to the sides of the world, northeast, southwest. So you're going to have northeast, southwest. That's going to be the sides. So therefore, you'll gain all the corners basically. You gain all the corners where you have extended the limit which you're allowed to walk without being counted as Tchum Shabbos. Murubas, if the city is square already, ain't obvious. And you don't make corners, you don't make a square around it. I think Gemara will explain later. What it means is that if the square is tilted, it's not the sides of the square are not parallel with the northeast, southwest, and it's tilted on the side. So you can't say, okay, I'll make another square which is which is parallel to the north and the east and the south and the west. That makes such a square which should be around this square and therefore extends some of the places. So it's not just like we extend the circle. So that you can't do. You can't, if it's a square already, you can't do that. That's Murubas ein oisel acher. So if it's wider in one direction and narrower in the other direction, close to being a triangle, it doesn't be exactly a triangle, but similar to a triangle situation. So then, so you put a square around the triangle. Now, the one side of the triangle would be the widest side. The widest side would be the one side of the square, and then at the narrowest side, you'll gain quite a bit on the narrowest side, because you're going to make a square which is it doesn't have to be a square, actually. It could be a rectangle, but you will make a rectangle around this triangle. I hope that's clear enough. With one of the sides of the square of the rectangle being obviously the widest side, I think. That's a pshat. Then he says, Hoyos bayis echod yoytzik hoya bayis echod yoytzik min pogum, or shnei batim yoytzik k'mo shnei pgumim. So if you have, let's say, the city is, let's imagine is a straight line, and it tends in a straight line, and then you have a house which is sticking out of the rest of the city. So this house which is sticking out of the rest of the city, or two houses sticking out from the rest of the city. So let's look at the north side. Let's look at the north side of the city. It's a straight line. Let's make it this easy, straight line. Then you have one house of the city which sticks a bit more northwards, or two houses, two edges of the north, they stick out a bit more northwards than the rest of the city. That's later the Gemara will change the pshat a bit, but that's the pshat of this one time. So that's royen oise ki'ilu. That's shnei batim yoytzik min shnei pgumim. Royen oise ki'ilu chut matuach aleo u'moeded menol halon alpayim amo. So let's go back just to on the north side. There's one house sticking out. Okay, so there's one house sticking out. So therefore, let's say the city is a square, rectangle, whatever it is. That's it, and so we have one house sticking further out. So basically, that line, the rectangle, the line will be a line running because it's the line running parallel to the rectangle, but the line will be at the edge where the house sticks out. Now there's one house sticking out, and you're gaining a whole area along the whole length of that side of the rectangle, which you're going to gain. And only after that line will the Tchum Shabbos start. Even though you have only one house sticking. I think we said. Now, keshes is there's two separate shapes. So keshes is like a bow. So that's the houses are built in the shape of a bow. That's how the shape of an arch, whatever, bow. That type of thing.
Not the houses, the city. The city.
Okay. All right, so we have the two shapes. One is the bow, and one is a gam. A gam is like a Langehof turned to the Langehof. The protrusion is to the left. So you have the stick, and then you have the top part that protrudes to the left. So take the Langehof and make the protrusion to the right, and you have that. So that's a gam. So it's an L shape in some configuration, different configuration. Gamma, it's the Greek gamma letter in capitals. Okay, so if it's kashes okim gam, so royin oisa kihilu melea batim v'chetzeres. So you see that empty space which is within the area of the boat or within the area of the gam, as if it's full of houses. Now, basically, by the case of the bow, as Rashi explains, so that you take an imaginary string. So you have the bows, you have the wooden part bow, then you have the string part of the bow. So what you do is you have an imaginary string of that bow, the city which is a sacred bow, and the whole area within the string, between the string and the bow, that whole area is considered filled with houses. That is irrelevant to the keshes, the shape of the city or the houses are built in such a way. Relevance to the gam So then you square it. So you square the gum. You square the gum, and you look the whole area, which is within the gum. You square it, and the whole area within is considered full of houses. So it's an L shape, has become a square. Right. And then, and after you've done that, that's when you start measuring. There you measure the 2,000 hours. Okay. This is the Brisa, and we explained some things which are written in the Gemara, but now we'll say the Gemara. If it's long, then it's K'moshehi. Just leave it as it is. You don't add any extra. So the Gemara says Pshita, of course. If it's a nice, I don't know, it's Pshita. It's the shape. It's a square shape. So therefore, square shape. So that should be left because the circles would make into a square. No, if it's a square, that's it. So the Gemara says. It's long and narrow. Okay, so it's like a rectangle. So since it's a rectangle, the thought you should add the width to the length. I was make that you should make it square it. So it's a rectangle. That's so it's make it turn it into a square. So that's what Kamashma. No. Once it's a rectangular shape, that's it. You don't give it any extra. Merubas, we mentioned it before the Pirish. So it says in Merubas, it says the Ein Oismos obvious. You don't add by the circle. You make a square out. By Merubas, we don't make a square. Pshita. If it's a square, what's it the square? So it says let's the it's squared, but not squared in the direction of the world. It's squared, but the parallels of the square they're not parallel to the four directions of the world. That is clear what I'm saying. So so you might say you should make a square around it, which does fit into the direction of north, east, south, and west. So kamashlan that we don't. As long as it's a square, that's it. That's the maximum you have to shots. Okay, now they want to ask the question. We said in the Brisa, so you give us extra space. If you have a house, which is, let's for argument's sake, we have the rectangular square city, and then you have this one house which sticks out. So all of a sudden, this house sticks out, let's say 50 amas. So all of a sudden, on that whole side, you have an extra 50 amas before you start counting the shots. And then it says, so if you have two houses sticking out, so also you have two houses, so you draw a line between the two houses, and you have all this extra space for the troop. So Gemara says, if you have one house sticking out, you say all of a sudden that you say that you've given this extra amount of amas, which this buyers take, and you consider that part of the city. If you have two houses on the same side, it's for sure that we have to be told that you have two houses on the same side. Of course, we should draw a line at the edge of the two houses and extend that part of the city that should not be counted as part of the shots. So the Gemara says, now we're talking about when it says two houses sticking out, we're talking about in opposite directions, in the two opposite sides of the city. One to the north, let's say, of the city, and one to the south of the city. I would say, okay, we can extend the city that one side of the city we're able to extend. To extend the city in both opposite directions. We don't do that. We don't say that. So Kamash will learn. That's why the Brisa tell us, yes, as if you have a part of a house sticking out, doesn't matter. It's two directions. You extend according to the edge of the house. Right. Says the Gemara continues with explaining the Brisa. If it's done like the city and the houses in the city are in the shape of not the houses individually, I mean, as they're built, as the roads, houses as they are around each other. is in the shape of a gam or a keshes. So as if it's the area in between. Let's speak about the keshes. So just be easier if we focus on one of the shapes. So the whole area within the imaginary bow string of the string of the bow and the wood of the bow, that whole area is full of how we fill it up with houses, imaginary houses. And so you start measuring the 2,000 amas from the string of the bow, the imaginary string of the bow. That's what we said. So on that, so when it says, a city which is made like a keshes, like a bow. Okay, so what he's saying is, now you have the bow. Now you have the two ends of the bow. So if the two ends of the bow are more than 4,000 amas, so then there's no connection between the part of the city which is on one side of the bow to the part of the city which is on the other side of the bow, and therefore there's too much distance. They are considered like two separate cities, and therefore they do not connect. Again, so if you have this bow and you have the two, should I call them heads of the bow, so the two heads of the bow, if between the two heads of the bow there is more than 4,000 amas. The thing about 4,000 amas is there is, since you can walk 2,000 amas from the city, you can walk. So therefore, if you're walking from one head of the bow, 2,000 amas, and you arrive at that spot, and when you walk 2,000 amas from the other head of the bow, you arrive at the same spot, because 2,000 amas is the tchum, the size of a tchum is 2,000 amas. So so even let's say if the head of the bow would be a separate city, so you'd be able to walk 2,000 amas. And then the other hand, so if the other head of the bow, you can walk 2,000 amas. Now if they meet and overlap, so so it's pochas me'arba, so it's less than 4,000 amas. It's less than 4,000 amas, so the tchum from each head of the bow overlaps. From both ends of the bow, they overlap. So once they overlap, then it's considered one city. So then you measure from the extra. Now you can measure from where the string is. So you measure from where the imaginary string is. Avim lav. If not, so then even though it's one city because it's connected by what we'll call the wooden part of the bow, so if the distance between the two heads of the bow is more than 4,000 amas, in other words, the tchumim do not overlap, so then it's two separate entities. And if it's two separate entities, therefore you start measuring from the bow itself, not from the edge of this, where the houses finish in that city, in the inside of the bow. That's where you start measuring, and you cannot go as far as the string. I will say that Tosfos on the other Tosfos, when he is on the other side of the page, which is actually that Tosfos belongs on this side of the page, but it's been printed on the other side of the page. So it doesn't mean from the actual bow itself, from the wooden part of the bow. He says that you will, let's say the distance between the two heads of the bow is 6,000 amas. So let's say the distance between two heads of the bow is 6,000 amas. So then you'll start measuring from closer to the bow, you'll start measuring from the place of the bow where you start measuring from the place of the bow where the tchumim do overlap. So let's say, I don't know, 200 amas further down the bow, 200 amas further down the bow, it does overlap with the 200 amas of the further down of the other end of the bow. So then we'll pull the imaginary string over there, as long as we have an overlap. As long as we have an overlap from the tchumen of the two edges of the two opposite sides, so that will pull an imaginary string according to Tesis, and but further than that, that will be once you're further than that, and then you cannot fill it up with houses, so to speak. But that area which is within the overlap of the tchum, according to Tesis, remains that we can fill it up with houses and start measuring the tchum from over there. It's only the outer edges of the two opposite ends of the bow from which you will not be able to measure the tchum, only from the edge of the city. You won't have any extra area there. It doesn't seem like that in Rashi, but maybe we could explain Rashi in such a way as well. Maybe Rashi is not contributing to Tesis. The simple wording in Rashi seems to say that you measure if it's once you don't have the two heads, once the two heads don't have the tchum of the two heads of the bow don't overlap, so you start measuring directly from the houses of where you exit the city. Depends which part of the city you exit. That's where you will start. That's where you start measuring the 2,000. But maybe it could fit in somehow. We could make it work with Rashi. Okay. So Gemara asks, did he say that you can have such a large gap? He said between the two edges of the bow, you can have such a large gap as much as 4,000 amas. If you have the wall of the city which was broken, so the wall of the city has been broken in, and not just broken the wall, but broken in quite a bit of area of the houses around it as well. So you have a gap in the wall of the city, and it's not just the wall itself. The houses next to it, and deeper into the city, have also a lot of them have been destroyed. So it says, so if it's 141 amas and a third, so then that's it. So this is considered as two separate cities. You cannot carry from one edge of the city to the other edge of the city. Sorry, you cannot. The two edges of the city are not considered one. That means because the whole city is considered like Arba Amas. The whole city is considered Arba Amas. If you're walking from the part of the wall which is still standing there, and you're walking across to the other part of the wall, and you went across, it was, let's say, 150 amas, and which was the broken area. So you went across 150 amas. So those 150 amas will be counted as part of your tchum. It won't be counted like a city with the whole city, just like the amas. It's counted as if you just now walked. You walked from this city, which is the one edge of where the break took place. You walked at 150 amas, and then you're in the other city. But the 150 amas, they count. It's not like one city. So we see that Rabbi Huna says even a gap of 140 doesn't count, breaks up, and it's not considered one city. So Rabbi Huna said the kasha kamberuchas kamsherus. He says this din of 140 does not speak about that just one side, the city to one side was broken in, and then the rest of the city is connected through the other end of the city is connected. There's a connection. No, it means it was broken in both sides. That the two opposite sides of the city were broken, and they're broken with the houses. It means that there is in the city there is this gap. This whole city it was one city. It was one city. But now you have a gap, a main, what should we call it, a highway of a gap of 141 amas. We have 141 amas, which that gap goes through the whole city. Then it's when it splits, when it's broken. So that's what the Gemara means. When it's broken on both sides, means it's broken and it's broken through and through from one end to the other. So then that is considered the gap. Whereas when Kambaru Chachas, the bow, you have an end, it's empty on one side, by the other end the houses are connected. So therefore you have this whole system of the bow, and you fill up the bow, and the tchum starts from where the imaginary thing starts. And what does it teach us? What do we learn from this din of Rabbi Huna that is considered like two cities? That din of Nifritza, we learn the noisen karfef lezu with karfef lezu. See the thing that usually by city. So if you have a house within 70 amas of the city, you have a house within 70 amas of the city, 70 and a bit. So you have a house within 70 and a bit of the city. So then it's considered part of the city. So therefore, you might think that in order to have these cities, the city has now been split in two, basically. So you might think, so how far can the city limits? Then you have another house which is within 70 amas. You have another house which is in 70 amas. So that means the city limit still continues because it's still part of the city. So I would think to connect the two cities, which because now it's been split in half, you also 70 amas is the maximum. So that is the chiddush over here in the words of Rav Huna, that then it's even if the two 70 amas touch each other, that's good enough. In other words, this distance that we say is city can extend. If there's till 70 amas, if you have so that is that 70 amas is if it meets with another 70 amas, then that's good. Nois and Karfel is if you have two cities, and then the two cities will be considered like one. Nois and Karfel is the Karfel. So that I think that's part of the question really. What's the teaching? Nois and Karfel is Karfel. So the question is, Rav Huna already said this once. We learned this once in the Mishnah. This now in the Mishnah. Nois and Karfel. You give a Karfel to the city. So that the city has 70 amas, which is still considered part of the city, and you don't start counting the tchum. So that's different. Remeir says so Remeir says that every city you start counting the tchum Shabbos 70 amas after the end of the city. That's what Remeir says. No, they disagree. The Lei Amru Karfel didn't say Karfel El Ben Shtei Yards. If you have two cities that connect the two cities, you can't just say, we start counting the tchum 70 amas. No, we start coming from the end of the city, we start counting tchum. But if you have two cities, then you can have the karfel can act as a connector. The 70 amas can connect and it's counted as one city. The Itmer and we learned the Memra. There's the machlokes about this actually. What's the intention? That you have the karfel means 70 amas is the city is connect, or each city has its 70 amas where they can connect 141 amas. The Itmer of Hunam Karfel. So when it says that each one has the 70 and a bit amas, so we had a bit of a technical error right now. So basically, the question over here is that it seems that the chiddush of Rav Huna, when he was saying this thing with the wall of the city which was broken, is that you can have a distance of two karfels of 140 amas, and it will still be considered one city. And the question which we have is that in concerning this Mishnah, Rav Huna, when he explained this Mishnah, which we just mentioned, so there he said already that between two cities, If you have two karfas, which is about 141 hours, that is okay, and it will you can and that short distance, the two cities will connect and be counted as one city. So it means he said it once. Why does he need to say it again? We'll just stop with this kasha. Okay. Good evening.